Well, good afternoon, folks. This is Ray Berthium, Chair of our NER Coffee Committee here. And I'd like to thank you all for participating today. I've got 12:30, so we'll get going so we don't cut any of our speakers short. We are working on hosting as many of our scheduled sessions for our NER Coffee meeting as we possibly can. There's a couple more that are already scheduled, and we've got some in the wings, so stay tuned for more announcements as we go. We're trying to do as many as we can. All of these, I've been getting some questions, and all of these will receive half of a Category 1 credit hour through SAF and the state of Maine. Everybody that participates will get a certificate emailed to them stating that. And if I could ask everybody that's on this webinar or this meeting today, at some point during the meeting, after the meeting, send Cindy Pascal at cpascal@maine.edu a message that you participated today. Then Cindy will know who was here and have your email address to send you the certificate. So if you could do that, that would be great. These will also, we're going to try to have links posted for each of these sessions that will be available on our NER Coffee website and hopefully the National Coffee website. When we get those done, we'll send out a blanket email to all the participants letting you know it's there. We will be unable, however, to award credits for anybody viewing the non-live session, and that's only because of the requirements through SAF. We have no way of knowing who sees it. The other thing I wanted to mention real quick that I would have mentioned if we were in person, anybody that's been attending NER Coffee over the years knows Cindy Pascal and Louis Morin. They've been fixtures with our committee and very instrumental in making this work. They're both retiring, so that next year's NER Coffee, assuming we have one and we're able to do it in person, will be their last. We always ask for volunteers, people that want to participate in the committee. And with Louis and Cindy retiring, that becomes a little bit more of an urgency, certainly on my part. So anybody willing and able to participate in our NER Coffee Planning Committee, please send me an email, give me a phone call, let me know. It does not take a tremendous amount of your time, but having thoughts, ideas, and contacts from everybody makes a big difference. With that, the only other thing I'll mention is during these proceedings, please leave your microphone muted and your video muted. Also, don't try to share your screen. We've got our presenters that will share their screen and do the talking. On your screen, you'll see a chat button, should be at the bottom of your screen. If you click on that, you'll be able to type a message if you have a question. That's how we'll do questions during the course of the presentation. Okay, so with that, I'm going to turn this over to our first speaker, Curt Harvey. You're looking at his screen right there in the background. So, Curt, I'm going to be quiet and it's all yours.
All right, thank you, Ray. My name is Curt Harvey. I'm the Forest Resource Management instructor at the St. John Valley Technology Center. So this is a new program for us at the St. John Valley Tech Center. We're located up in Frenchville, Maine. We serve SAD 27, based out of Fort Kent, SAD 33, which is St. Agatha and Frenchville, as well as the Madawaska School Department. The Forest Resource Management Program was introduced this past fall, so we're basically in our first year. It's technically a 2-year program with options for a 3rd year, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later because we currently have both 7 sophomores and 2 senior high school students in this program right now, so we currently have 9. 9 students in this, and we currently have all of them in one cohort. So basically they're attending for half a day every day in the afternoon. So we have one session with the hopes that we have 2 sessions or a full day every day in the following school year. Our vision basically is to prepare students for the forest industry with various skills and knowledge to be able to directly enter the workforce or seek higher education in the forest industry. At a minimum, at least, we're trying to expose individuals to career opportunities in the forest industry. Currently, the way the program is set up, we are going to be awarding, after 2 years of completion, their articulation agreements with UMFK's forestry program. So if they do 2 successful years in our program, UMFK has agreed to actually provide these students with a total of 6 credits. So 3 credits for their intro to forestry class, that's Forestry 100, and another 3 credits for Forestry 208, which is their forest products and operations course. This is the students get 4 credits for attending this towards their high school diploma as well. We're also working on a tentative agreement with Northern Maine Community College right now because we're requiring our students to also take the OSHA 10 course, and they offer that there as well. And we're working on an agreement so they can get a 1 credit course towards a program at NMCC. Other stackable credentials right now we're looking at, we're working with CLP basically to get them an apprentice certification, like I said, OSHA 10, and then also ACT Work Keys, which is a National Career Readiness Certificate. So if they successfully complete 3 assessments, which measure foundational skills, they basically can get a National Career Readiness Certificate. So like I said, this is a brand new program for us, and a few individuals who were very important in getting this off the ground were Yves Levac, who actually is an instructor for CLP, Vern Labby, who's a retired Maine BPL forester, Steve Young, a certified wildlife biologist, and Jeff Dubas, who's a forestry instructor at UMFK. These were 4 people that the director at the tech center and a few other individuals basically met with and talked about what we needed to do in order to generate a curriculum for this program. So they were very key individuals in this. Other individuals are part of our program advisory committee, so our PAC committee meet. And these are individuals in the industry. These are basically individuals that share their information as to where they believe we should be headed in terms of satisfying, basically providing them with future employees and basically help them satisfy industry best practices. And some of these industry partners here are represented here. We have individuals from 7 Islands. We have individuals from Irving Woodlands, PNC, Maine Forest Service. We have a couple contractors that basically send some individuals to meet with us, as well as some individuals from the Maine Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife. Some of the topics that we've been discussing this year, as well as into the next year here, these are topics that we basically, in conjunction with the UMFK program, Jeff and his other instructors basically shared some of their ideas as to what, so we kind of modeled it off of theirs. We are, for the most part, not a full-on harvesting program. We're more or less a forest resource management program, so we kind of modeled it off of what UMFK does. However, we're not requiring all our students to attend UMFK or any post-secondary program, but we did use some of their. So these are some of the topics that we'll end up discussing over the course of the 2 years. So some of the challenges. Well, we're a new program, and right off the bat, one of the ones that we came up against right away were costs. Forestry is an expensive, especially when you're looking at harvesting equipment. There's quite an expense that goes along with that. We've currently been able to secure funds through grants to purchase a small woody loader, logging winch, and chainsaw. So basically on a small scale, we're able to do some harvesting. We did realize real quick that living in northern Maine, and the snow does get pretty deep here. It still is right now. This equipment didn't really suffice, so we're looking at changing our equipment offerings so that we can do some harvesting and some hands-on activities throughout the year. Another issue is scheduling. As I mentioned earlier, the bulk of our students are actually sophomores. And the reason for that was basically so that we could get them for a total of 3 years, 2 years in class with a third year internship. And I'll talk a little bit about that in the next slide here. But scheduling these students into this program has been quite difficult just because they have other graduation requirements. And because our tech center is not we're not under one roof with all the school. Basically, we've got the tech center in one community, and the sending schools are in different communities. So students travel a total of 40 to 45 minutes to get to the center. So it doesn't make sense to send them there for an hour. So they're basically coming in for a full half day. And that half day that they're with us, they're not at their sending schools meeting other graduation requirements. So that's been somewhat of an issue, kind of a struggle to get students into the program because they have other graduation requirements. Another issue that we've come across is decreased student enrollment, and we're sort of robbing from one program, to basically get another program off the ground. So we've had students kind of jump ship from one program to come to ours, and we're looking at possibly the same thing happening from our program next year. So keeping numbers in the program has been somewhat of an issue. Another issue for us has been space. I have my own classroom, but I don't have my own shop space. We're kind of pressed for square footage in the building right now, just because this is a brand new program and we didn't eliminate programs to make room for this one. So we're kind of sharing space, but we've got some plans in the future to hopefully make this, to accommodate our program as well. Another issue that I've been coming across, and this is something that, you may come across this as well, but we have individuals, some students in there who have family members or friends, or parents' friends that are in the industry, and they sort of put out some bad publicity about the forest industry. So sometimes the kids bring that in. And so basically another thing that, I'm doing is trying to make, talk the program up and put out some good PR. The forest industry is strong. But it doesn't come without challenges, but I just got to kind of get it straight, make sure that students understand that everybody has their own opinion, but not everything out there is always exactly what everyone says it is. So it's been somewhat of a challenge for a few individuals in particular. Future plans. So one of the things I said was looking at future equipment purchases. Currently we did receive notification that we're going to be receiving our 2 deer harvesting simulators. We had secured some grant funding for that. So those will be coming in. Obviously with the current pandemic here, things in terms of shipping, things have sort of been slowed down, but it looks like we'll be getting delivery sometime towards the end of the school year. The other thing we're looking at is we did find some individuals that were willing to donate a harvester. It's an older piece of equipment. We're sort of weighing out the pros and cons of that, just because it might require quite a bit of money to basically get it up to par. But anyway, it would be a whole lot cheaper to do it that route than it would be to go out and buy a new one. So we're still working on getting some funding to basically either purchase some newer small equipment, but definitely larger than what we have, so that we can work year round, possibly even a used or older cable skidder. One of the things that we're looking at doing, and some of you may have heard about this, but we were awarded we were in the running for a grant. We've been not necessarily awarded it, but we're basically doing the legwork here to basically get possibly up to $100 million to build a new school. And part of that grant is that the CTE center would be basically housed. We'd be under one roof. So that would take care of a lot of the scheduling issues, just because there wouldn't be any traveling as well. So that's something that we're hoping for. It'll definitely make it easier for our program as well as the other programs at the CTE center currently, and probably offer, be able to make make more programs available to students. And I mentioned earlier, internships. Currently, the way we have the program set up, we've had individuals on our PAC committee, as well as individuals in the community, who would like to get our students in the seat of their equipment or out in the field with them, but they definitely want individuals with some experience. So we set up the program so that we've been taking in sophomores, which is something that other programs, for the most part, at our tech center haven't been doing. They've typically been taking juniors and seniors. But if we figured if we could get sophomores in, give them 2 years of in class and in the field training, and then their senior year, give them the opportunity to actually go out in the field and do some internships. We're not at that point yet because we're in year 1. This would probably be in year 3 before we actually get an opportunity to do that. But that's sort of our plan for the future with our current students. At this point, I guess I could open it up to questions here.
Yeah, we've got a couple of minutes for questions. If somebody has any questions for Curt directly. Okay. I don't see any questions. So with that, Curt, thank you very much. If we have time for questions at the end, we'll do that then.
All right, you're welcome.
We'll go to our next speaker. And Mark, the floor is yours.
Well, good afternoon. This should be interesting. Ray's actually made the PowerPoint because I'm not very techy, so we'll see how that all rolls along. He'll have to pay attention, I guess. So quick introduction here. I'm down at Region 9 in Mexico. This program has been here for, 20 some odd years. I'm finishing up my 8th year as the instructor here. I have 30 years experience as a professional logger. Always worked for myself, private landowners. Our primary focus here is on logging. We run quite a lot of equipment. Actually, we're pretty fortunate in that regard. We have a cable skidder, a grapple skidder. We have a forwarder. In the winter, we run our excavator with a bypass grapple on the yard. We also have a bulldozer that we use mainly for cleaning up snow. So my students get quite a lot of seat time, even though we're, in one regard, a conventional program in that we still cut our wood with chainsaws, but then we sort of get a little bit into the mechanization with the grapple skidder and the loaders. I have had 4 students just in the last few years go on to school to be foresters. So not all of my guys go into the woods as loggers. I've had some that have jumped from here into the forestry programs. A couple at UMFK because we have the articulation agreement as well. So the question posed to us here were labor challenges in forestry, and I came up with 5. There's probably about 5 million, but I came up with 5 that certainly affect us down here. The first one is enrollment numbers, and not just in my program, but in our CTE school as in general, because the high schools just don't have as many kids, and that's just a reality. And so we've added some programs to try to get more students, but when you add a program, you lose kids from another program. So what I have done this year, I split my forestry program to a 1-year program, and now I teach a heavy equipment operation program on the opposite day. And that's worked pretty well. So this year I've got 16 students total, and most of my forestry guys are taking heavy equipment next year and vice versa, which is kind of what I hoped would happen. So my students are getting experience not just in the logging, but also in excavation and road building and all that. So we run the other piece of equipment I have in the other program. We have a track skid steer, and I just purchased a almost brand new backhoe. So we're pretty fortunate. We burn a lot of fuel here. So enrollment's a big deal. Again, kind of out of our hands. I can't force people to have babies. So we get what we get, and that's the way that goes. Our second reality that we deal with is down here in Western Maine, there just aren't all that many logging jobs. We have several pretty big mechanized contractors, but logging is a trade where you don't just hire people and sit them on the sidelines till the job comes up. You hire somebody when you need them. And it's tough to hire somebody with no experience, especially in the high production mindset of today's logging business. So even though we hear all the time the workforce is aging and we need people to come in, there aren't jobs always available for a student right out of high school, or even if they've gone on to the MLOP program, which I think has been a great stepping stone for students getting out of the industry. But a lot of my guys want to stay around here. And so the reality is there aren't all that many jobs just waiting around for them. So that makes it a little bit tough too. The third point I guess I'd make is that, and Curt talked about this a little bit, a lot of students just don't have exposure to the logging industry like we used to see. I think a big factor there is, there used to be a cable skidder in about every third yard down here, and now there's not as many people cutting wood because of mechanization. So there aren't that many connections for young people to make to see what that industry is like. I mean, most of my guys really don't have any idea at all of what's out there for mechanized logging nowadays. So that certainly has changed things. It's still obviously a big industry, but there's less people doing it. So that makes it a little bit tougher for students as well. Moving along, I guess we'll go from 3 to 4 because that would make sense. Young people nowadays don't have the opportunity to gain work experience like I did when I was a kid. All kinds of factors, one of them being state laws that make it hard for somebody. I started working full-time summers when I was 12 years old, and that doesn't happen anymore. So the logging industry today requires somebody who's willing to, quite simply, to work pretty long hours and do what needs to be done to meet production needs. I always made sure that the headlights on my skidder worked because I used them, especially in the wintertime, morning and night, So the older generation, I think we had that stay with it till it's finished mentality, and kids nowadays just really haven't grown up with that type of work ethic. And I don't totally blame them for that. They in a lot of cases haven't had the opportunity to go out and get jobs and have that responsibility. So that's really the big thing that I teach my students here is being responsible. I put a kid on an excavator, and once he knows how to run it, he's kind of on his own, really. And that's quite a shock for a lot of students to be able to have to step up to that level of maturity. But that's what they're going to need when they get out in the workforce. So it's certainly different. We don't have the farmers that we used to have with the kids growing up on farms and running tractors and bulldozers and everything else. So we're really starting at ground zero in a lot of cases. And that alters, I think, a little bit kids looking at this industry and knowing that it's hard work, and maybe that's not really anything they're overly interested in. So that's something we contend with. Another factor, and I guess this is maybe more my opinion than anything else, but most logging in the state of Maine now, especially, is mechanized. So the workforce requires equipment operators. And it's interesting because a lot of my students really enjoy running the chainsaw and running the cable skidder and doing that whole process. And there's really only a certain amount of people that can sit in a piece of equipment all day and run it. And that's something that the industry has to contend with, because that's what the industry is now. When I started logging, one of the things I liked about it was that I could buy a pickup, a couple chainsaws, and a used skidder and go and be my own boss. And that reality isn't there for young people today because of the cost of getting into it. So now logging is just a job, which means it has to compete with all kinds of other jobs. And unfortunately, a lot of other jobs maybe offer better pay, less hours, and better benefits. So if a student can go and work for an excavation company and make better money, if they know they're not going to be a business owner, then they just move on. So that is something that has to, that's just a reality of it, because of the way the industry has changed so much. So again, there's probably way more reasons that the industry has declined. Those are some that I see as realities with the young people that I deal with. So I guess to conclude, programs like the MLOC program have been great. I've had a couple students go through that. It brings them to the next level, you know, with all the new high-tech equipment that we can offer. So I don't think there's one silver bullet here that we can say, okay, if we fix that, that's the problem. I think workforce has changed, the industry has changed, and like always, logging is always been perceived, and a lot of times it's a reality, that it's hard work with long hours. And some people perceive it as a job with lower pay and benefits, and that's not always the reality, but that is certainly the perception. I'm impressed with some of the students I get, that they still want to get involved in this industry. And I'm glad there's a mechanized program for them to step up into. It's kind of tough. It's kind of tough for, again, for a kid who really wants to cut wood the way I cut wood, to find the wood to cut and to be able to do it. It's economically, it's just a tough thing to do. So I guess that's about it for me. And so thank you for listening. And I guess if we have a couple questions, we can do that.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. As I look through the chat here, and again, folks, please, if you have a question, type it into the chat box there. We've got a question here. How many students are currently enrolled in the Mexico program? And as a follow-up, what's the minimum number of students required for a viable program? I think that's a question for you, Mark.
Yep, I'm working on it.
Okay.
Well, this is Curt here. While he's looking up that number, I already mentioned how many students were in my program, but I can mention something, answer the question about the minimum number of students. Our program, or our programs at the Tech Center, are overseen by a committee, a NAVAC committee, and they, I know there are individuals in that on that committee that would like to see, I believe 12 students in the program in order, and that and there's some discrepancy as to what they mean by 12 students. Our director has said, does that mean 12 students total? So 6 in the morning, 6 in the afternoon, or is that 12 and 12? He prefers it to be 6 and 6, or a total of 12. Others might see it as, so there's a bit of a, like I said, a little bit of an argument in regards to that. But one of the things that we've brought up is that with our decreased enrollments, basically a simple number might not necessarily make sense, because some classes are much smaller. So we have numbers that, from one year to the next, the numbers fluctuate. So we've been able to float, from one year to the next, sometimes with as little as 4 students in a program. But obviously, if that continues for an extended period, or at least 2 or 3 years, then they have to look at possibly cutting a program. So there's no set number, I think. We have to kind of play it by ear to some extent because there are a lot of variables that go into making those types of decisions. But yeah, ultimately we'd love to see, 12 students in every program. But with the numbers that we have, that's not necessarily going to happen.
So I'll jump in there, and the reason that I switched up the way that I ran things here was I was finding one year I'd have good numbers, the next year it'd be low numbers, and we run in every other day. I was running first year one day and second year the next day. So to try to even that out, I always did a little dirt work in forestry, but I split the programs, and this year it worked pretty well because I had 8 kids on each. So I was I'm pretty happy with that. If I can run 8 or 10 kids a day, I'm pretty happy. That's, again, it varies because, we don't have, I can't really control that. Recruitment only does so much. If a kid doesn't want to cut wood, they're not going to cut wood.
Okay, guys, thank you. If looking at the chat there, another one. Since modern mechanized harvesting requires operators, are there workforce challenges due to other sectors which need operators? For example, earthwork, construction, etc., and being price competitive on salary.
I did type something in that chat, but the reality is the excavation companies, especially the bigger ones, they're in the same boat finding younger people. I think by and large, their wages are probably better for equipment operators, but the downside with almost all the excavation companies I talk with is most of the people they hire have to start out as laborers, and that makes it a little bit tough because everybody wants to run the excavator, but that's just not realistic. So they're in the same boat. All the trades are in the same boat.
Okay. Yeah, and I know we're in that same boat. We have a couple contractors, construction contractors that are actually they've approached the tech center and the director and said he needs some operators as well, and we're actually looking at incorporating or actually starting up a heavy equipment operation program. Again, like I mentioned earlier, the problem with that is that we are at the school I know I'm going to be losing a student from my program, from the forestry program, if we do end up with a heavy equipment operation program. He's going to jump ship and go there. And I know the same thing happens in the industry where you have individuals that might work construction for a bit and then jump over to, run equipment in the woods, and then vice versa. So yeah, they're seeing the same thing, and we're seeing it at the school already. And we're literally just starting these programs.
Okay, thank you. Another question, and this would be, I'm guessing for each of you. How many that go through the program end up continuing on in that vocation, and do you lose some after all that training?
I can answer that first. Like I said when I was in my talk, a lot of my kids take this because they just want to try it out and see what it's all about. And I'd say maybe 10 or 15% of the students I get actually go on into the logging business, which seems kind of sad, but I think all of our programs would say that. We don't, a kid might take automotive mainly because he wants to work on his own car. Probably he's not going to become a mechanic. Same with me. I get a kid who might want, it'd be fun, digging dirt or cutting trees, but they're probably not going to do it. I've been pretty impressed that I've had, like I say, four or five students now have gone on to become foresters, which is pretty interesting because that's not really the focus of what I do, although you really can't cut wood without practicing forestry, in my opinion. But yeah, I talk to a lot of my kids. I keep in touch with a lot of them, and if they get a job, I'm pretty happy. In the work ethic of today's youths, if I can teach them a little bit about working and showing up on time, then I feel that's pretty successful.
Yeah, and I've got a brand new program, but I can't say that. Can't really answer how many go through the whole program and end up in the vocation. But I do know that I have 2 seniors that basically took our program with no interest in working in the forest industry. They basically wanted it for personal gains, basically just learn a few things about the trade. And one of them has plans to be work in wind technology, and the other one in some field, wildlife biology. My sophomores, they're still young. They still got a few years as to what they plan, but I do have a couple that definitely have an interest in working in the industry. One has intentions of being an operator. Two of them have interest in being operators, and one of them is going to be in the industry, and he's just not sure what he's going to do yet. So there's definitely somewhat of a positive outlook. I can't really gauge it on the two seniors that I have, but like I said, with the sophomores that I do have, there do appear to be a few that will end up there. Time will tell.
We can only hope, right?
That's right.
Any other questions, folks? Okay, I don't see any more. I will remind everyone, please, everybody on this meeting, please remember to send Cindy Pascal. If you look on the chat there, I put her email in. Send her a message that you were here. That will give her an idea who was here, plus it will also give her the email addresses with which to send the certificates. Thank you to our speakers, Curt and Mark. I know, as we talked about earlier today, this is not the best way to do these, but in today's world, this is what we have, and I think it worked out pretty well, and I appreciate you both being willing to do so. And thank you to all of our participants. I hope you learned something. If you have, everyone should have my email contact. If you have some questions, please feel free to let me know. And if I don't have the answer, we'll find it for you. So thank you again. Everyone be safe and be healthy, and look for more information about the next coming presentations. Take care, folks.
Thank you.